Is the season saved? Kansas dominates Iowa State for a very impressive bounce-back victory.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here, and you can find me at D Johnson Radio on Twitter. Kansas victorious over Iowa State 69-52. We're going to break it down. Thank you for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. Thank you to the everydayers catching each and every episode. And thank you to you for listening wherever, whether it's through anywhere that you get your podcasts or if it's on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. And we'll get into what happened. Is this a season-saving victory for KU? Game awards and what's next for the Jayhawks as well, with K-State coming up on Saturday. This episode of the show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Kansas victorious here, 69-52 over Iowa State. And Allen Fieldhouse, Big Monday. It just heals all, apparently. They just don't lose on Big Monday at home under Bill Self. And you know, this was a really impressive win for a lot of different accords for KU, right? Because Kansas smashed a good Iowa State team who, as much as we talked about Kansas being desperate coming into this game, Iowa State was desperate coming into this game too. They had lost 2 straight games. They had lost by almost 20 points at home. But I think Kansas matched that desperation in this game. Kansas was great on the defensive end of the floor. They held Iowa State to 31% from the floor. They held Iowa State to 14% from three. And really won this game on that defensive end of the floor, I would say. I mean, anytime you only give up 52 points. Now, did Iowa State have a bad offensive game mixed with KU having a good offensive or defensive game? Yes, I would say so. Like, Iowa State did miss some shots that maybe they would normally make. They only shot, 55% on free throws, but still, it was, I think, a combination of both when you look at what happened here. KU had a really good shooting game themselves, right? I mean, they shoot 47% from the floor, 50% from three, 9 of 18 on three-pointers. They were 8 of 11, so they took care of business, at least on the free throws in this one. And it really came from 3 guys for KU for that shooting, because Hunter Dickinson was 7 of 12. Dajuan Harris was 4 of 6. Zeke Mayo was 6 of 13. You total those 3 up, and you're left with 17 of 31, which is well above 50%. They also combined to make 5 of 7 from 3. So if you take away those guys from the rest of the team, Kansas would have shot 4 of 11 from three-point range, which would still be good, but it's not as good as 5 of 7. And then if you take away the 2-point shots, then you're looking at, them shooting closer to 40% as a team. So those 3 guys were pretty pivotal for KU on the offensive end. And you total it all up. Obviously, there were other players that contributed there, but the wild part of this one for the win for KU is, part of the keys to the game for me coming in were thinking that Kansas needed to match Iowa State's intensity on the glass and needing to do well in the turnover department. Well, Kansas ended up with 13 turnovers, which is certainly better than it was in the game in Ames when it's up to 17. So, they did better there. But Iowa State only had 7. I thought that was an area where Kansas, they did force a good amount of turnovers themselves in the game in Ames. And in Iowa State's 3 of their losses this year are their 3 worst turnover games. Well, that wasn't the case tonight, but the difference, a lot of those turnovers were not live ball. There was a big difference in points off turnovers for Iowa State in the first matchup. That wasn't the case this time. It was only 10-9 Iowa State points off turnovers in this game, which for a team that, that's one of their identities, that's kind of a win for Kansas to that be the case. But did this save the season? The ultimate question here, is this a season, saving victory? I think it depends on your point of view. There might be the point of view where it's just like, I don't really think the season needed saving, right? I mean, I get it. They're not having as great of a season as you could imagine and hope for, but they're still going to make the tournament. They're still ranked 16th in the country. Other schools, other teams would die for, your down year being ranked 16th in the country. Other schools would be like, that's our high year being ranked 16th in the country, right? So if that's your point of view, then no, the season did not need saving. But if your point of view is, hey, this is Kansas basketball, the expectation is championships, Big 12 championships, Final Fours, national titles, right? If that is the bar you're going to judge them on, for better or for worse, which I think, unfairly or not, I think that is the bar that we judge them on. I think that this kind of saves it in that way. And it's weird in college basketball just in general, because It's such a weird sport where March Madness is so weird and there's so many teams in it that in a weird way, as long as you make the NCAA tournament, like there really is no season enders or season savers in the regular season if you view it that way, because you could get an 8 seed in the NCAA tournament and make the national title game like North Carolina did a couple of years ago. You could get an 11 seed or whatever, NC State, and make it to a Final Four, right? Like that is allowed to happen. But if you're looking at your best opportunities and for where things are, right, it involves playing your best basketball and being the best team you can be over the course of the regular season to turn into that run in March, right? Those runs that we talk about, they do happen all the time in March, but if you're looking at specific school to school, it's more of the rarity. And so for Kansas to start feeling like they're playing better, to start feeling like they are a better team, I do think this is kind of a season saver in a real way. Now, of course, there's a chance you could give it back on Saturday. Playing in Manhattan against a K-State team that has all of a sudden found life and is playing really good basketball right now, right? And you've lost the last 2 years in Manhattan. Of course, you could lose that game, and then it's going to feel like you kind of took a step forward, and then you took a step back, and you're kind of back to square one, so to speak. But this is really important. You look at the upcoming stretch after the Kansas State game, there's a lot of winnable games. And so guaranteeing that you're going to at least go 1-1 this week and guaranteeing that you're not going to go 0-2 this week and what would lead to a 3-game losing streak is very important. But also this gives you the opportunity to build on this. This gives you the opportunity for momentum, because now if you do win that game at Kansas State on Saturday, and then you have that upcoming stretch where you think you have some good winnable games in front of you, it's going to feel like you can get this thing really rolling headed into the Big 12 tournament or headed into March or however way you're looking of it. And so if we are looking of this as, what is this team truly? How good can they truly be? I do think this kind of saves the season in a weird way. Again, kind of just depending on your point of view there. Now, beyond what the win means and what happened in the game, I do think this is quickly becoming a little segment that we do in our open here and all of our game recaps is the lineup talk, because it seems like there's different lineup talk to go over each and every game for KU. So some of the interesting notes of this one, we got to see Rylan Griffin start the game for KU. He ended up playing 23 minutes in the game, and I think that would have ended up being more. He got those 2 fouls in the first half. I think if he doesn't pick up those 2 fouls in the first half, he probably does play closer to, maybe 26, 27, 28 minutes in this game. And it wasn't even a particularly great game for Rylan Griffin. It was a really, I don't know, you had the foul trouble in the first half, and then also he just wasn't making threes in the first half. He was getting open looks. Like, those are going to go down for Rylan Griffin over the long haul because he's too good of a shooter for them not to. But he had a good second half. Again, you look at the stats, you're like, oh, he had 5 points on 2 of 6 shooting, and he had 0 rebounds, 1 assist. Like, how good of a game. I thought the second half he was really good. He had that drop-off pass to KJ Adams driving into the lane. And I think we've seen a little bit more ability by Rylan Griffin to drive and do that this season than maybe you thought coming into the year, where it seemed like the main attribute was the 3-point shooting. He did hit the 1-3 in the corner in the second half. He also had that nice aggressive drive and transition where he throws down that really cool dunk. So I thought the second half, Rylan was really good. I thought first half, it just came down to, hey, when you're a 3-point shooter, like, it's just going to come down to your production, if it's good or bad, whether you're making the shots or whether you're missing them. He was missing them tonight, but picked a good night to miss him because Kansas won by 17, and they're going to need him to make some in some other games that are going to be closer. And so, I like the fact that Bill Self, trusted him enough to start the game and stayed with him starting in the second half. And I think there will be long-term positives if they continue to do that. We did see Flory off the bench with KJ starting, and that was certainly to the ire of the students in attendance. And you got the Flory chants and the "We Want Flory" chants, and that certainly created some divisiveness among KU fans and broadcasters alike. I thought KJ played a really good first half for KU. I thought it wasn't as active in the second half, but overall I thought KJ was good for KU. Again, I still would like to see Flory play more than 15 minutes per game. I continue to say this. I think KJ is a good basketball player. I think he's a helpful basketball player. I think Flory is a great basketball player. And so to me, if KJ's playing 22, 24, 25 minutes per game and Flory's playing 22, 24, 25 minutes per game, fine, that totally works for me. I'm not as big in love with the 32 to 15 minutes, but I say all that to say KJ was probably better than Flory in this game today, right? I do think they're are certain things you could point to where, you would have certain plays where Flory would make where it's like, yeah, you probably don't get that from KJ. There's also some other, plays where Flory would make where it's like, yeah, KJ probably doesn't make that mistake, right? And that's kind of the back and forth that you're going over. I did think it was interesting, though, that when Flory came into the game, it wasn't with Hunter, which has been that lineup that I think has been working pretty well. When they threw Flory in the game at first, and I think for a lot of his minutes for the game, it was next to KJ Adams as opposed to Hunter, which I prefer the Flory-Hunter lineup, I think, over the Flory and KJ one. But in the end, those are kind of the big lineup notes, in addition to, I guess, KJ playing 32 minutes and Dajuan playing 35 minutes. And that would be the other thing here. Shaquille Moore only played 2 minutes in this game, okay? David Coy played 9 minutes, felt like a very quiet 9 minutes. Maybe the rotation is cutting down finally, right? Like maybe Bill Self is just saying, I'm going to go with, the 4 guys I trust are going to be getting 30 plus minutes per night. And we're going to really get this thing down to like an 8-man rotation with a 9th guy getting spot minutes. I don't know. Maybe that was just a 1-game thing. Maybe it wasn't, but I certainly found it interesting because Shaquille Moore did make a 3, but he was quickly out of the game after that. Did have the shot clock violation. But bottom line here, this feels like a win that could restart your season in a positive way. Like it feels like a win that reminds, I think, both this team and the fans what this team is capable of against a good opponent. I was talking during the preview and I talked to a bunch of KU fans, whether it was in my inner circle, I talked to people at work, I talked to, whatever, like kind of gauging the environment of like how people felt going into this game. And, I had my personal feelings on things too, that like, if you were comparing the confidence meter, so to speak, of a home game at Allen Fieldhouse against a good opponent for tonight, before the game started, before the game tipped off, versus past years and past games with this team, this would be lower on the confidence meter than a lot of those other ones, if not the lowest point. But they still won by 17. And so I think that's what this is. This is a reminder of what they're capable of, that Allen Fieldhouse is still this omnipresent being of a basketball court. And you didn't just win, you dominated against a really strong opponent. And beyond that, got some good contributions from Rylan Griffin, got some good contributions from AJ Storr. Like those are things that can be tangible game changers for you in the long run. And so I think just a lot to come away from here, and a nice bounce back win that you do hope is the start of that nice run for KU. All right, let's get to our game awards next. This episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by Game Time. Are you looking for tickets to your next big event, whether it's a concert, comedy show, or a sports game? Finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache, but with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I've been using Game Time Picks myself. I love perusing tickets that way. The curated deals make it super simple to find great tickets at a great price. No more sifting through thousands of options. And you can grab the super deal as well for a prime seat. And the value is, I guess you could say, a steal. And the best part, you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a deal better somewhere else, you'll refund you 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Ready to make your next event even better? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, continuing on, let's get to our game awards. Kansas taking down Iowa State. Let's start with our best moment of the game. I thought there's really one moment that is the moment of the game. Like I could go over other ones and talk about Rylan Griffin's dunk or Zeke Mayo's step back 3 in transition that put him up 22-13 early, or I don't know, like there's several different plays that were cool highlight plays and stuff like that. But like, there's a very obvious best moment of the game because it might be the best moment of the season. The importance of this game for KU and the play where it was actually started by a bad play by KU, right? They had a bad turnover. And then it ends with KJ Adams throwing down an alley-oop. It was an unbelievable play. And it was all strung together by every single player on the court making an important contribution to the play. So let's start with the very finish. We're going to work backwards. KJ Adams throws down an incredible dunk where he goes super high in the air and throws it down, brings the energy. Boom. Perfect. Right before KJ Adams throws down the dunk, it's Diggy Coit who's throwing an absolute dime alley-oop from half court. Great pass. Okay. So the KJ dunk can't happen without the David Coit, dime pass. The Diggy Coit pass can't happen without Dajuan Harris making this insane sliding save where he's able to slide in, pick up the ball, avoid out of bounds, avoid travel, and save it in pass all at once. It's just an unbelievable play by Dajuan to save it in. The Dajuan insane sliding save can't happen without Hunter Dickinson poking the ball away. And Hunter Dickinson's poke away probably can't happen unless AJ Storr is also hustling back defensively and forcing the offensive player from one side to change hands with the ball or have to worry about pressure on the right side to where Hunter from the left side can poke it away. Everybody, you get hustle from everybody, you get a contribution from everybody, and they're all strung together. And so it's the metaphorical, I guess, importance of that play, but it's also how cool the play was just to watch. And that's the best moment of the game. It might be the best moment of the season at this point in time. Kind of reminded me a little bit of that, the one, I think it was the Jamari Traylor dunk in Austin against Texas. If you remember that one, I don't remember which year it would have been, maybe 2016, 2015, somewhere in that range. And it was just this like back and forth, like loose ball. Nobody could, eventually KU picked it up. And I want to say Jamari threw down like a pretty crazy dunk at the end of it. So that kind of what that reminded me of. Okay, roller coaster moment of the game. This is a new award for this game because I think there were a lot of roller coasters. Honestly, we can go back to that very play. That insane alley-oop sequence doesn't happen without a bad turnover. So it's like, you had Rylan Griffin's performance, which I thought, he goes 0 for 4 from 3 in the first half, and then he has a really good second half. The AJ Storr experience was a roller coaster, right? He hits that corner three at the shot clock expiring where it's like, wait, what? How did that go in? And then immediately he goes down and takes like a heat check three and it doesn't go in. I do think there was more good than bad from AJ Storr, but like that was, I think, kind of a perfect example of that. You had the inverse where it was Shaq Moore getting a shot clock violation when it's like, dude, just throw it up. And then like the next possession, he's hitting the three ball where it's like, oh, okay, well, that's a nice little roller coaster there. I think you had a lot of roller coaster from Flory Bidunga in this game, right? You had some possessions where he would just have like an unbelievable block or something like that. Or he would have like, there were a couple plays in the first half where he didn't get a block, but he altered the shot or altered where the ball was going, that it helped KU make a stop on the defensive end. But then also he gave up a ton of offensive rebounds or, made a mistake here or there in the first half or in the game. So like that was kind of a roller coaster. It was just kind of a game of roller coasters in a lot of way for KU. Worst moment of the game. I mean, they kind of just led this. They led this one for 35 minutes and 15 seconds. They only trailed for a little over a minute, which was in the early portion of the game. It's hard to say there was like a worst moment of the game necessarily for KU. I guess you could say the defensive rebounding as a whole for KU. So Kansas ended up with 29 defensive rebounds. Iowa State had 17 offensive rebounds. So, that's not KU's best performance on the defensive glass. I think especially early, I'm trying to remember what the numbers were early, but like early, that number was even more skewed from where it was. But even if we just do take the overall number for Kansas in this one, it was a 37% offensive rebound rate for Iowa State. That's the second worst allowed by the KU defensive rebounding unit this season. The only one was worse was TCU. So I guess the narrative there is give up more offensive rebounds because you'll win by double digits. But no, the other two ones are the Iowa State loss and the Baylor loss. So not a good defensive rebounding game for KU, and certainly in the early going. Again, I thought they were a little bit better in the second half, but I think that would probably be the worst moment of the game. I mean, if we're just picking one specific moment, I don't know that you could necessarily pick one because, again, KU was kind of just in control for the entirety of the game. Okay, here's one. When Fran Fraschillo was just letting it fly on the refs for like harshly for that like minute or two. That was pretty wild. Anyway, appalling stat of the game. I mean, just looking at Iowa State's shooting line, 31% from the floor, 14% from three, 55% from the free throw line. That is really bad. That is very appalling. So that one would certainly be up there. I think that you could probably go back to the offensive rebound numbers for Iowa State, but the other one is this: 17-6 advantage for KU in assists in this game. Like the ball was moving super well for Kansas, and their defense was doing a good job Like I said, like Iowa State missed some open shots, and clearly they should have made more of those. Like typically they do. They're in a bit of a funk, I think, right now, at this point of the season. But even if they do make a couple of them, like I still think Kansas wins this game. Like they played super well on both ends of the court. And so I guess that would be the appalling stat of the game. Either that or maybe that Curtis Jones only had 7 points for them on 3 of 11 after how good he was in the game in Ames between these two teams. Okay, that brings us to offensive MVP for KU. 3 guys in double figures, so maybe those would be the ones that you look at here. 17 points from Zeke Mayo, 6 of 13 from the floor, 5 of 6 from 3, also had 3 assists, did have 3 turnovers, though. Dajuan Harris, 12 points, 4 of 6 from the floor. Hey, how about this? Dajuan, 4 for 4 at the free throw line. Beautiful. 4 assists, 2 turnovers. And then you Hunter Dickinson, 14 points, 7 of 12 from the floor. He had 9 rebounds, 3 on the offensive end, so you're helping offensive side as we're giving out offensive MVP. 1 assist to 2 turnovers. In this game. Hunter ended up with the best plus minus on the team for KU, by the way, at plus 20. What about a dark horse? Could we give it to AJ Storr? 8 points for AJ Storr, plus 16 off the bench in just 17 minutes. Had an offensive rebound and kind of found money with that corner 3 and the shot clock when the game was a little bit closer and you needed those points a little bit more. I'll give him an honorable mention, but I am going to actually go Zeke Mayo. Led you in scoring this game. The 3-point shooting was just ridiculous. And he's hitting some deep ones. It is so fun when Zeke Mayo gets going. He continues to just be unbelievable in Allen Fieldhouse. So he'll be my offensive MVP. Defensive MVP in this one for KU. You could go with Flory Bidunga, 4 blocks in just 15 minutes. Think about that. If he was playing 30 minutes, basically what Hunter played, 33 for Hunter. But if you doubled it for Flory, I know it doesn't always work this way, but he'd be on pace for 8 blocks, which would be unbelievable. Quick side note. Any chance if Flory comes back next year, he has a chance to challenge some of Jeff Withey's block numbers for a season? I don't think so. Withey was, but I don't know, man. Flory's so good at blocking shots. It seems like such a sacrilegious question to even ask, but it's he's been so good blocking shots. But how about this? Hunter Dickinson also had 4 blocks. So you look at the 2 games KU played with Iowa State, basically 20 blocks for KU over the 2 games. So they were able to have an interior presence blocking shots in both games if you're KU. Dickinson did not have a steal. Flory did. So maybe you'd give it to Flory in that situation. I thought KJ had a really good defensive game, though, covering up for guys' mistakes at different points, too, when, things are rotating around. So, I'm going to give it to KJ Adams. I thought he had a real nice impact on that end of the floor. Also, KJ, a really good passing game. He actually led the team with 5 assists for KU. Our overall MVP of the game, though, maybe I would go with Hunter Dickinson. He was, I guess, in the honorable mentions for offense and defense, and I think he was the only player in the honorable mentions for both. So 14 points, 9 rebounds, 4 blocks, did a lot of everything. So maybe we'd go with Hunter there for overall MVP. All right, what's next for KU? We'll discuss. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Next up for KU is Kansas State. It'll be on the road on Saturday. It's a day game, 1 o'clock game, I believe, for Kansas in Manhattan. And Kansas State's playing good basketball. You look at Bart Torvik over the last 3 games, they're top 5 team in the country. It's a small sample size, small stretch. So, will they keep it going? I don't know, because if you remember, KU had that 3-game stretch where they were the number 1 defense in the country, and then they gave up a billion points to UCF and yada, yada, yada. But anyway, Kansas State is playing better basketball right now, and it'll be a tough game for KU. They've lost the last couple of years in Manhattan, so, trying to win one back, and that's the importance of this Saturday game. I don't think it washes away. If you lose on Saturday, this game was still an important win, right? And you still have the upcoming stretch after that, which will start the following week when you play versus Colorado and at Utah, when things lighten up a little bit to where I think if you're Kansas, you win this game at Kansas State, it's going to feel like you're starting something. Whereas if you lose the game at Kansas State, you're still going to look at it as, well, at least they beat Iowa State, and now they can start something, right? But so it's kind of the difference between getting a solid amount of momentum and being possibly red scorching hot going into the Big 12 tournament. That is possibly the difference coming up on Saturday. And I think in a real way, it would really back up thinking that this game, the win over Iowa State, is kind of a reset to things and is the start of something if you are able to win this game on Saturday, because it's going to be a tough game to win on the road, right? It's certainly, you would imagine, going to be closer than this Iowa State game was. So it'll certainly be a tough one. But then, like I said, Schedule lightens up a little bit there before the kind of finish to the season, because you're looking at Colorado, at Utah, at BYU versus Oklahoma State, at Colorado. Like, those are all games where you are going to be favored. The at BYU game might be a little bit close there, and that's a tough place to play. But realistically, you should be going at least 4-1 in that 5-game stretch. And then you finish tough. Tech, Houston, and Arizona are all top 12 teams on KenPom, but at the very least, you get 2 of them at home, and you feel like you should have won the first game with Houston. So real good opportunity to build some momentum starting now for KU. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for tuning into the show anywhere you get your podcasts or on our YouTube page. See you next time.